Shanghai because old Shanghai no longer exists. Shanghai has been built out in a way that frankly, actually, Panama City is the first place I've seen in a long time that reminded me of the pace of development and construction that I saw in Shanghai when I first went to Shanghai, just where massive building after massive building is going up. And what I think will probably happen is if the government's willing to make an investment in terms of incentivizing film here, and it doesn't have to be massive films to start with. In fact, it's probably better if it's smaller films to start with, but that you can get a crew base going and then kind of use the natural advantages that are here where you've got lower cost of labor than Europe, lower cost of a lot of resources than a place like Europe. And then if you have some kind of tax incentive in place and you get somewhat of an experienced crew base, so like when we would shoot in Thailand, we would have mostly Thai crews, bring in, DP from the outside for the most part, most of your department heads, but definitely have, key top guys from the crew who were local as well. And it worked very well where your cost advantages went kind of hand in hand with a skilled crew base to be able to make it all work. And then the other thing that's dictating where you're shooting stuff is China is such a massive market. If a movie like Transformers is going to get into China anyway because it's one of the movies that they want, but beyond something like Transformers and those 10 or 12 movies a year, everything else is fighting like cats and dogs to get into that market. By partnering with a Chinese company, that's like a pot of gold to get yourself into this gigantic market. And I think they've taken advantage of that. And Panama doesn't have a similar thing market-wise, but if the government sets up some sort of an incentive structure that goes hand in hand with, and the one thing I've noticed is there's a lot of diverse locations here, just in what I've seen between Bocas, Panama City, the old city, just the natural kind of rural areas. There's a lot here that you can do a lot of different things with. So I think there's a lot to work with. If the government helps kind of goose things along a little. The other thing is it seems like the Latin American, Spanish language programming is becoming more and more of a mainstream feature in a market like the States, and companies, not just Telemundo and Univision, but also companies like Fox, people are wanting to bring in Latin themed programming. So it seems like because of Panama's long history of relationship with the U.S., sometimes good, sometimes not so good, but that it would be a way of kind of like a bridge from Latin America into the American market if you could get like a production hub going here in the way that Miami is a bridge from the States to the Latin American market.
What do you think about that?
Well, for us, the film incentives are a key driving force to why and where we're making our movies. The majority of stuff that we're doing is financially structured on a foreign pre-sales model that works with about 35% of the budget of the film comes into a foreign pre-sale, and then that subsidy money that comes from the government or a tax rebate is one of the primary drivers of the whole financial model. So we need it. I can't really make something not in a tax rebate or advantageous financial environment because the numbers won't add up. So it's a real important for us.
Okay, so imagine you're like, okay, we're in Panama is an option. We're using the dollar, locations are good, and you're about to decide between Panama and other two countries. You go visit, or you send your location scout to visit. What is going to be like? And they all have like a really good incentive. What is the key point? What can they do, to be the deal closer? Like, what can they tell you? How can they sell it? What are you expecting for them when you're already in the country to be the deal closer, where you say, you know what, this is the people I want to work with. This guy has it. Panama is what it is. What could be it?
Just a large crew base of professionals, of knowing that you're going to come in and be treated well, be treated fairly, and that the movie is going to be executed at a high level for everyone working on it. And that level of professionalism is something I know that's important to all of us, and all it takes is one one movie that has a good experience because everyone talks. And if Mark was to come and make a movie down in Paramount or down in Panama, that we would all call him if we had something that might shoot here and say, "How was your experience? Who did you work with? Who did you like? Who did you not like?" And so it's going to come from that referral basis, but it's just about getting one movie right and delivering for someone.
I think that's a really good point, is that even though Hollywood is a big business and it's a very competitive business, it's also a very small business, especially as you get higher and higher, and everyone knows each other and has conversations. People call me all the time about places that I've shot, and I think, it's a long-term game, and better to make a smaller amount of money over a longer course of time on film after film after film than and I say this in the States, I say this to people, starting out, whatever, like, always better to do a fair deal and build the relationship for the next movie and keep on building to the future than to squeeze somebody too hard on the deal and leave a sour taste in their mouth where they don't want to do it again.
Yeah, I mean, ease of use is a very big thing for us also. I mean, we go back, we shot the third Transformers in Chicago, and the experience there was so incredible for us. The population of Chicago was very warm and came out and watched us shooting the movie and never really made complaints about it, as opposed to a place like New York City, which is always a problem. People are screaming at you on the streets, people are trying to interfere with your production. But also the city of Chicago just rolled out a red carpet for us, and they, set up a really strong system whereby we could, get anything done, anytime, anywhere, and we felt like they were part of our team. So I think having a system set up where you can facilitate, what can be shot and cooperation from police, cooperation from military a lot of the times in our movies, locations, things like that is a really big part of the deal. But I think, the project for bringing film and television, all that to Panama, I think is you have to have a plan, a very careful plan. You really do have to build that crew base. I think that probably starts with TV business to begin with. Like Mike was saying, most of Univision, Telemundo, all of those shows which are generating incredible ratings and incredible amounts of money, those are all, and historically they have made those shows in Colombia, they've made them in Mexico, and there's no reason why they shouldn't be made here. And so I think you got to start training a crew base in that way, and you have to have stages. I mean, you can't really make movies without great soundproof, technically advanced stages, and equipment. So I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, because perception is reality in a lot of ways, and if you ask your average studio executive, we're looking at Colombia to go shoot something. Your average American studio executive is going to go, Colombia? No way, I don't want to get kidnapped. If you say Mexico, no, we're not sure. Like, most people will be scared because of what they see from the media, no matter what the reality is on the ground. And that's something where I think Panama has an advantage over every other Latin American country. Because of the canal and the long history of the relationship, there's a stability in Panama, at least in terms of perception, in terms of from an American business point of view, and also because Panama's always been a financial center, that if you say, we want to go shoot something in Panama, here's what the deal is, it'll be looked at with an open-mindedness that, frankly, I don't think the way, say, shooting in Colombia or Mexico would be looked at with the same kind of open mind.
Okay, I want to go. I think there's a lot of people wanting to ask questions, so let's hit a little bit. Somebody have something to ask? All right. Okay, talk to me.
Hi, I'm Anji Ray. Thank you for coming.
Microphone.
Thank you for coming and talking to us. My question is, with the Duran movie that's being filmed in Panama right now, would that be a prime example as to if something goes well, then the buzz is started and that would be like a crew base that you would go to? Is that an example of what you guys were just saying?
Yeah, I think, you know, in a general sense, the way it's almost like a building of momentum, where you start with one film, it grows, that people have a good experience on it, the crew does well, you know, people come back and talk about, yeah, you know, blah, 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 and then another couple films come down, those films go well, and by the way, now that you're shooting 2 films, you got to bring in more people, so your crew base is expanding, and the government sees there's benefit of bringing people in, maybe the government adds some incentives, and all of a sudden, you know, 5 years later, things look very different. But everything is built kind of, you know, one film at a time almost, and it's really kind of like an organic growth process. And I think that's the thing, is it's not going to be about like, let's go from 0 to 100 in 1 year. It's more about let's kind of build step by step. And I think what Mark was saying about having a careful plan, I think if you guys can kind of come up with a strategy for kind of capitalizing on the strengths here and capitalizing on good experiences of films that are filming here, that's how it'll kind of organically evolve from that.
Okay, thank you.
I think too, the people in a lot of ways that are key to this are the producers and line producers, because those are, we've seen it a lot in Eastern Europe. A lot of people have, you know, over maybe the last 10 years have gone from real reluctance to shoot somewhere like Romania, Bucharest, and Budapest, and some of these places, and people were, it was a foreign notion to us all for a long time, and then movie by movie you saw that people could achieve things in those places that they couldn't achieve in other places. You could build sets in a way you couldn't afford to build elsewhere, etc. And we all talk to each other. That's really how it happens. We have a friend who's shooting in Budapest now, and they were going to shoot somewhere else, and somebody reached out to a line producer who had made a movie there, and they gave them the pitch, and they said, here's the truth of what it means to shoot here, here's, you know, the truth of what it means to shoot in this other location you were thinking about, and you know, once people start talking, those are the people you trust, people who've had the experience. The other people who are a big gatekeeper to shooting, at least for studios abroad, you know, are the production executives at the studio, at the film studio, and you know, they are, you know, they tend to be a few years even behind where the rest of us are on the front lines of making films, but they're also, you know, very eager to find new ways to do things. So there's a way, I think, for you guys to access those people, to educate those people, to show them what can be done, and they're the ones who really are in charge of slates of 10, 15 movies, who can bring up an idea like shooting down here and explain to the creative executives why that's a good idea, and they can accelerate a process. So I think those are also the people you want to get, you know, up to speed on the possibilities.
He brought up something I think that's important too, is that transparency is pretty important for all of us. There are benefits and drawbacks anywhere you shoot, and it's most important for us to have a firm understanding of what our limitations are going in, so that we can adjust accordingly. I'd much rather find out that something's going to be difficult on day 1 as opposed to day 30 when you run directly into it. Okay,
You're a big producer in a big company. Everyone knows Panama. You're a middle company, and you are independent. So we have like 3 models right here. I want to have a question for them. What about when Panamanians have a project? How do they reach up to you to be able to, a project that they think is good, they have half of the money, everything's settled. How can they reach to a studio or to an independent looking for the possibility of co-production or getting their movie done? How Panamanian producers with projects in their hand can reach up to people like you that have the know-how, have the experience? How can we do that? How it happens?
For me, it's about having it as far along as possible in terms of the life of the project. If just a screenplay shows up on our desk, we know that there's going to be a lot of work to get it up and running, to get the project to the point where it's a viable concern. Whereas if a movie comes further along in the process, maybe half of the budget is there, there's been a budget, a breakdown, there's a schedule, there's a production plan, and it's really coming in and about maybe bringing another piece of the financing or packaging the movie at a high enough level that gets the movie made. But the further along in the process, the better.
I would say, unless it's something that has to have a big financial partner and an American involvement, if you can, there's so much money here, clearly in this country, floating around just by the level of economic activity. If it's great, you look at something like City of God, a studio would have messed that up. We were involved with it, but we completely were hands off, just in terms of like, we read the script, saw what he was doing, and said, great, when you're done, come back to us and we'll help distribute it around the world. But I think if you've got something great and you can get it financed here, the more studio involvement, the more they're going to want to change it, control it, tweak it. And if you're making something that's like a gigantic sci-fi movie that you need that kind of infrastructure and that kind of budgetary assistance, then there's no other choice. But if you're doing something that's very, kind of true, kind of gritty, kind of real, like a City of God or something like that, much better to not come to the States until you've got a finished film. You show up at Sundance, you show up at Toronto, you show up in Cannes, blow everybody's brains, and then they're all running after you and they want to make 3 more movies with you.
Yeah, but it happens to us all the time, and we'll come down to what's first, the chicken or the egg, or that, guys all know what that means. You have a really good script. Panama is a city, is a country with a lot of money, I just said, but the industry is something they just started. With the people that have the money, this is not an industry they want to put their money in because they don't know it. You know what I mean? So I can talk as an experience. Like you go to people that have the money. They're like, if you get me a producer that have done this before and that think this is a good script, I'll give you my money. Because for them, you're just a Panamanian with a good idea, whatever. They don't even know. But tell me something that is legit.
So do they want a nice, like you stole my term?
I want to get it legit on it. You know what I mean?
Boom.
Boom. There you go.
So would something like a foreign sales contract be enough to incentivize an equity investment like that? So if you had a Panamanian script, it's a great script, and you brought it up to somebody like Kirk D'Amico, who has an independent foreign sales company called Myriad, and he said, great, because he wants to have volume of product and have volume of quality products. And if he says, look, I'll sell this internationally for you, is that something, is some kind of foreign sales contract enough would that be enough to incentivize a private investment?
I think that would help.
Because then I think that's a very easy way to go, because you always have these foreign sales agents who need good quality product and who need products that they have financial partners on in other countries. Because one of the things is, when you put together a movie with independent financing, it's really a jigsaw puzzle. And you're saying, and everything changes, because say 15 years ago, you'd say, all right, I get 12% out of Japan, I'll get 10% out of Germany. Now, unless it's a massive sci-fi movie, you're going to probably get 0 out of Japan, because the theatrical market is so tough to break into. If you don't have a Japanese partner, you're getting nada out of Japan. So a place like Panama, which is normally going to be worth a very small amount, percentage of the budget based on the population, but if I'm running a foreign sales company and somebody's coming to me with a project out of Panama that's got 50% of the financing attached, that's very interesting to me, because now I can get the rest of that 50% out of, say, 10 major territories, still have another 10 major territories to make profit on. Everybody wins, and now you're on to the next. So in terms of, and also it's a lot easier to get a foreign sales agent's attention and get his focus than to get the head of Universal's attention.
Mm-hmm.
That's just reality. Oh,